Hello and welcome back to The Drag Detective. I'm Derek, and today we are going to be talking about some of the worst strategic moves in Drag Race herstory. Now, if you guys have followed the channel for a while, you know I'm a huge Survivor fan. I'm a huge Big Brother fan. I'm loving Big Brother 25. If just someone could go home, I'd love that. But that's for another video or another channel. So obviously strategy really comes into play in those shows. But Drag Race, I guess it does come into play, but it's not really focused on as much in the actual editing. And because of that, the queens themselves aren't necessarily coming in like with strategies or necessarily like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. It's more fluid, we'll say. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is not who you're making alliances with or who you voted out or any of that. It's how are you doing in the challenges. That's always going to take center stage. But with All Stars, with some of the twists on the regular seasons, strategy becomes more and more important with every year of Drag Race. And throughout the years, there have been a couple stumbles. Decisions that I myself would not make. And as someone who plays orgs, online reality games, I play Survivor, I play Big Brother, I play The Challenge, I play all of them on Discord. I've never won, but I've come close a couple times. I feel like I know a thing or two about strategy. Watching 44 seasons of Survivor, watching like 10 to 15 seasons of Big Brother, I feel like I have the credentials to kind of break down some of these moves, talk about why they didn't work for the queen, what maybe would have changed if they had made a better decision. We're going to talk all about them and count them down from 5 to 1. Now, before we get into our top 5, I do want to name an honorable mention. And this is from All Stars 5. It's when Alexis Mateo voted against Shea Coulee in the Hotel Design Challenge. I think it was episode 3. Now, we know that this comes back to bite her later on, and she ends up going home probably a place or two before she should have because Shea can no longer trust her. And India, of course, spread that lie that Alexis was trying to form an alliance against Shea and gather the votes to get her out. That would have been much more interesting than what actually happened, which is just Alexis didn't want to vote against her two friends, India and Mariah. Now, obviously, when you're there and you're sending home your friends, it's not going to feel good. It's not like on Survivor or Big Brother where, like, these are strangers and, like, who really cares at the end of the day? These are people who work together, they see each other at events, all of those things, so it makes it very difficult. But if Alexis did not vote for Shea there, who's to say she doesn't make top 3? I mean, I don't think she does. I think she only makes it one round further to top 4, but that's still better than 5th place, which is what she got. Another thing that I think people are going to want me to mention, but I'm not going to talk about on my list, is Candy bringing Jimbo to the final 2 on Drag Race All-Stars 8. Now, the reason this isn't on my list is because Candy is in a position of winning. I think she's playing Kingmaker here. Playing Kingmaker means she's picking who's going to win. If she goes to final 2 with Jimbo, Jimbo wins. If she's going to final 2 with Jessica, Jessica wins. I don't think Candy had the consistency or the fan popularity that Jessica and Jimbo both had, which, in my opinion, are the two things it takes to really win a season of Drag Race. So I don't think Candy wins against either of them, so I don't think it was necessarily like a bad strategic move to bring Jimbo, because she's not winning either way. And it would make sense for her to bring her really, really close friend and make sure that they get the crown, rather than Jessica, who I don't know how close she was with prior to the season, but definitely nowhere near as close as she was to Jimbo. So that did not make my list. What did make my list at number 5 is Latrice eliminating Valentina on All Stars 4. Now, the reason this is number 5 is because it doesn't have as big of an impact as I think some of the later ones do, number 2 and number 1, obviously. As we get further up the list, it's going to be more and more critical decisions and critically bad decisions. This one, I think, helps Latrice, but it also helps Manila, because we're at the final 7. They're doing the club challenge, and Naomi and Valentina are in the bottom for Club 96, which was an iconic moment, and Latrice wins the challenge and the lip sync and is able to send one of them home. She ends up sending home Valentina, who is one of her very, very close friends. They just did an entire tour together before coming on All Stars 4, so they're very bonded. They've been through a lot, and it's really hard for Latrice to make this decision, but Valentina's kind of been in the bottom a lot recently. And Naomi was in the bottom as well, but she was pretty consistent for the first half of that competition. So she ends up sending home Valentina, And we know what this leads to, which is the next week Naomi wins the challenge and sends home Manila, and then Latrice gets sent home in 5th place. So all around bad for her and Manila. If she had sent home Naomi, what would have happened? So Naomi's not there to send home Manila the next week, and I'm inclined to think that Valentina probably does very well in the makeover. We know she's an amazing makeup artist. We know that she had amazing outfits on the season. Her inability to paint fast might hold her back a little bit, but I don't think it's insane to believe that she could have been top 2. And especially because she was such a fan favorite and producer favorite, if she's still there, it kind of makes sense to give her a win. Instead of giving that storyline to Naomi, where she'd been in the bottom a couple weeks and then gets to be in the top finally, they could have just given it to Valentina. But there's also room to believe that Trinity could have won this challenge instead. Who knows exactly what would have happened. What we do know is Monet didn't do a great job in the lip sync, so she's probably not winning. That means either Trinity or Valentina win, depending on which one is in that top 2. And do either of them send home Manila? If Valentina wins, she's sending home Manila. She's probably saving Latrice. It's doing 2 things. One, Latrice would have just saved it the week prior, and it's taking out competition. So it's all in all a good move for Valentina. If Trinity wins the challenge, she's not sending home Manila. And Manila moves on to the final 5, wins that challenge, moves on to the final 4, wins the season. And that makes Latrice happy because Manila's her friend. So either way, I think that this is a good thing for Latrice. Hello, this is post-production Derek, and I'm editing, and I'm realizing I made literally no sense whatsoever. Like, no sense at all. So, just to explain this ending a little bit better, if Latrice saves Valentina, they're in the top 6 makeover challenge together, and Valentina wins, she sends home Manila, Latrice makes it to top 5, and potentially stays because she actually did a really good job in that top 5 acting challenge. She just had to be in the bottom because it was like, if you're not in the top, you're in the bottom. Valentina probably also was in that bottom, has, I think, more bottom placements than Latrice at this point, and I think would have done worse in that challenge than Latrice. So there's reason to believe that potentially, that Latrice could potentially make it to top 4, but then again, Trinity won that, and she was probably going to take Valentina to top 4, because she was like, oh, the best are going to make it, so unclear there. But if Trinity wins the makeover, she takes Manila to top 5, Manila wins the top 5 challenge, makes it to top 4, and wins the whole season, which is good for Latrice, because if Latrice isn't going to win, I'm sure she would rather it be Manila that won, so she kind of screwed over both her and Manila by keeping Naomi. The end. So that's number 5. Number 4, we're getting a little bit more intense now. We have Ben de la Creme eliminating Morgan McMichaels in the very first episode of All Stars 3. Now, this episode kind of paints Ben in a bad light because she's talking about, I want to be making moral decisions, I want to make sure that we're all doing what's fair and what's right, and what is probably fair is sending home Chi Chi DeVayne. May she rest in peace. Because her number just had more issues with it than Morgan's talent show did. But earlier in the episode, Morgan McMichael said her strategy is to send the strong bitch home, which was, that should be on this list too. That should definitely be on this list. Maybe this is like in between. This is like the 4.5 is Morgan saying right off the bat, I'm sending home the good bitches, because that's just going to make everyone want to send her home, which is exactly what happened. But while Ben de la Creme is projecting to everybody, we're going to do the right thing, we're going to be, moral, we're going to be fair, she sends home Morgan and then kind of says it's for the group and is like, yeah, like this was for all of us. And it just kind of, I think, paints Ben in a little bit of like maybe a two-faced light, like she's saying one thing but she's doing another. And as we know, when the eliminated queens get a chance to come back in, Morgan rips Ben de la Creme to shreds. And I think this very much adds to her already kind of stress about the season, about having to make all these bad decisions, because now someone that she sent home is coming at her and is like, screw you, you're a snake. Which then immediately leads into her sending herself home later in the episode. If she sends home Chi Chi DeVayne, Morgan McMichaels, I don't know how long she makes it. She probably does good in the Divas Challenge. She probably makes it through the Bachelor and then goes home on Snatch Game, probably, is what happens. So, whatever, she makes it a little bit further. She doesn't have a reason to come at Dela. Now, if Morgan doesn't come at Dela in the Returning Queens episode, does Dela quit? Is that what really pushed her over the edge, or was this something she was going to do all along? I don't know, but I think there's definitely reason to believe that she doesn't quit if she's not kind of like set on this path by Morgan. It also means she might not pick Goth Kitty as her character for that episode. We know that Morgan goes off on her, she's really pissed, she's really upset, and she channels that into this kind of angry character, Goth Kitty, and wins the challenge. Maybe she doesn't do Goth Kitty, she doesn't win the challenge, she ends up in the bottom 3, and she continues on to the next episode, which she probably wins, and then makes it to the finale and wins the whole season, which is probably what should have happened anyway. This is a lot of what ifs, but it's definitely one of those decisions that came back to bite her immensely, with the fan reception to kind of that move, to the Queen's reception to that move, and specifically Morgan's reception to that move. So all of these things are kind of coming at Dela, and it leads to her quitting. Maybe she sends home Chi-Chi, she doesn't quit, because Chi-Chi was kind of like, yeah, like, makes sense. I don't think she was going to be coming at anybody who sent her home. So who knows what happens, but it definitely wasn't a move that did her any favors in the long run, and maybe cost her $100,000. At number 3, we are going to stay in All-Stars 3 territory, and we're going to do one that's in the very next episode, which is Shangela sending Kennedy Davenport home over Thorgy Thor. Now, there's a couple things I think that help Shangela in the long run if she keeps Thorgy. One of them is, I think Thorgy was definitely there to strategize. I think she was there to, make alliances. I think if Shangela keeps Thorgy, Thorgy would have Shangela's back if the roles were reversed. So that's one good thing. Shangela has somebody else in her corner who's not going to send her home. The other thing is, Kennedy at the end of the season got the most votes to move on to the final 2, from the final 4 to the final 2, when the jury votes for who they want to continue on. She got the most votes, and I think a lot of it is Shangela didn't need it, BB didn't need it, and after her reception on season 7, Kennedy needed it. She needed that push, she needed something to kind of take her to that territory of like, this is what's going to make you a Drag Race icon and not just a villain on a season. She poured her heart out to the jury, told them how much it meant to her, and all of them had to say, you know what, bitch deserves a vote. And they all voted for her, except for Thorgy. If Kennedy Davenport goes home second, she's probably not going to be at that final 4 and able to get the votes, and Shangela might then get the votes that it takes to make it to the top 2. Now, there's a whole bunch of what ifs. There's a whole bunch of, okay, well, what if Kennedy comes back in the Kitty Girl Challenge? What if, Ben brings her back in, or a number of things happen? She still makes it to the final 4. They still might vote her in, even though she was already eliminated. But I find that much harder to believe, that they would let a girl who already got eliminated into the top 2. But then again, maybe there's some like camaraderie. It's like we were all the eliminated girls. We did that challenge together. Maybe Kennedy still makes it over Shangela. But there's a lot more what ifs. Because at the end of the day, this was the only time that Kennedy was in real danger of going home, besides when Dela eliminated herself. But like, she eliminated herself, so whatever. Like, Kennedy isn't going home when she's in the bottom and Morgan goes home. She's not going home when Chi-Chi goes home. Like, this is the one real shot you have to send Kennedy home. Maybe Shangela should have taken it and given herself a better shot later to get the votes to make the top 2. Now, obviously, this is all, like, whatever, because they didn't even know the jury twist was going to happen, so how can she be making moves that she doesn't know she has to make? But even then, so she wins episode 3, she wins The Bachelor, and then just kind of bottoms out from there. Thorgy Thor, I think, has a much better shot of doing well down the line. She probably also does well in The Bachelor. She probably does really well in Snatch Game. I could very easily see her getting a top 2 spot in Snatch Game, because that was a very weak Snatch Game. Even like the Studio 54 challenge, like Thorgy sews, there's no reason to believe she wouldn't do well in that. Or in the acting challenge at the end of the season, which she almost won the acting challenge on season 8. There's a lot of things I think Thorgy could have done well at, and then in return saved Shangela for saving her this early on. Like, I just feel like maybe she would have gotten more out of her money by keeping Thorgy in than keeping Kennedy, in a lot of different reasons. So that was my number 3. My number 2, we're going all the way back to All-Stars 2, where this eliminating each other shit begins, and we're talking about the iconic episode where Alyssa Edwards and Tatiana both eliminate Jeremy Carey, formerly known as Fifi O'Hara. Now, I think this is pretty clearly a move made in emotions, not in strategy. Because even if they were going off of track record, her track record was better than Roxy's, who was in the bottom with her. If we're going off of who did the worst in the challenge, it's very close. It's very close, but Roxy probably did like a little bit worse than Fifi in that challenge. All of this is based around Fifi was the villain of the season and popped off on Alyssa and sent her home. And Tatiana did the same thing. What they should have done was eliminate both, which would have been iconic, but either one of them should have voted for Roxy because both of them went home because of Rolaska Talks the first time. And they'll go home again to them literally the next 2 episodes. But they knew that there was a 3-person alliance, an unbreakable alliance that was not going to touch each other. You have the perfect opportunity to split it up. Send Roxy home, and then it's just Alaska and Detox fighting for each other. And that's much more easy to deal with than a 3-person alliance when there's only 6 people left. If they voted out Roxy, Fifi stays. She probably goes home in the branding challenge, and then they all make it to top 5. And then one of Alyssa or Tatiana go at the top 5, probably Tatiana, and then Alyssa makes top 4. And as we know, what RuPaul said, she wanted Alyssa to make top 3. So Detox gets cut, and we have a top 3 of Alyssa, Alaska, and Katya. And there's a shot that Alyssa wins there. I mean, Alaska was the villain-ish of the season after Fifi left because she was sending home all the fan favorites, and she had her tantrum. Whereas Alyssa was just as popular in the fandom as Alaska, but was kind of the hero of this story. Like, whether she deserved that or not, she was portrayed as one of the 2 heroes, her and Tatiana and Katya, actually 3, of All Stars 2. So narratively, it probably makes the viewer feel better if Alyssa wins the season there. So by not getting rid of Roxy, did Alyssa screw herself from the crown? Potentially. She definitely screwed herself of a top 3 position. And even like in some of these other ones I've been talking about, like Shangela didn't know about the jury twist. Ben didn't know she was going to quit down the line. You know, all of these things, they didn't know necessarily what was coming. This one, I think it was very obvious what was going to be happening this season, which was Alaska and Detox are going to drag Roxy with them to the end and ensure that the 3 of them take up 3 spots in that final 4. So it just really doesn't make any sense keeping Roxy in. I think this was a move made out of emotion, and it ended up costing both of them a spot in the top 4 or potentially the crown. Okay, now we have our number 1 worst move in Drag Race herstory. It is from All Stars 8, and it kind of really surprised me that this queen did this because it made no goddamn sense whatsoever. It is when Alexis Michelle eliminated Lala Ree over Candy Muse. So it's the top 5, and it's the design challenge that Alexis Michelle knocks out of the park. This is her first win. She's been going through it all season long, crying and all of these things. She finally gets her win. The week prior, she was in the bottom, and Lala Ree saved her ass. And she tells Lala, like, I won't forget that. Well, bitch might have a concussion or something because she had some short-term memory loss and immediately forgot about that whole deal and sends Lala Ree home, keeping Candy Muse in the competition. What this does is set Candy Muse up perfectly because Jimbo's there, who's Candy's number 1 ally, and Jimbo has been slaying the competition. So that's good chances for Candy to continue on. Alexis doesn't really have a connection with Jimbo or Jessica. Really, her only relationships at this point are with Lala and with Candy, and her relationship with Candy is strenuous at best. They make an alliance, and by make an alliance, I mean Alexis makes an alliance that Candy says yes to because she has to, and then she immediately goes back on it. Alexis, I think this whole season was trying to be the strategic mastermind. She was trying to do what she could to set herself up, but at every single turn she shoots herself in the foot. By blaming everything on Darian in the commercials, by not standing up for Heidi, by sending Lala Ree home after Lala just saved you. If she eliminates Candy here, Lala and Alexis go on to the roast, where Jimbo wins and everyone else is in the bottom. There's a chance that Jimbo gets rid of Lala here because everyone did well at the roast. I think Lala would do okay at the roast, but I'm not sure Lala could do as good as Alexis did. So that's one thing. But also, Alexis is just not as big of a threat as Lala when it comes to comedy and stuff. So I think that Jimbo would probably get rid of Lala there and keep Alexis in the competition. Plus, Lala had just been in the bottom 2 times at that point, and Alexis had just won. So I think she would probably save Alexis and send out Lala Ree. And then they go into the makeover, where there's a good shot Alexis wins that. She didn't do great in her makeover on season 9, but that was mostly because of the costumes, and her costumes on All Stars 8 were amazing. She had amazing looks. So where Jimbo and Jessica really didn't do that well in the makeover, I think Alexis could win that and then earn her spot in the top 2, where she probably eliminates Jimbo, takes Jessica, and loses to Jessica, but Alexis would have been the runner-up. This was just such a bad move because Candy had her hands in all of the cookie jars. And that was very prevalent and very obvious just by everything going on. So why would you keep someone who was that involved in everything going on and get rid of Lala, who has just saved you? Now she's indebted to you because she's in the bottom. That would be a perfect time to really solidify that alliance going into the last 2 weeks. But instead, she cuts Lala, and with that, her chances of making it much farther in the competition, because she's kind of left in a boat with no paddle after that, and Candy votes her out. I think that is the worst move in Drag Race herstory. It makes no sense in literally any way, and it cost Alexis, I think, a much longer time in the competition, potentially final 2. But let me know what you think. Did I leave out any moments that you think should have made the cut? And are you calling bullshit on any of these moves? Are these actually secretly smart moves all along? Let me know what you think. Next week, we will talk about the 5 best moves, and some of them aren't even all-stars. Some of them are things that queens did on their regular season that pushed them ahead. So we will talk about that next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the second part of this little series. The links to all of my social medias are in the description below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.